All right, thanks so much for being here. And we're good to go? Excellent. So we just had a really impactful and really powerful discussion with seniors about the cost of living here in Nanaimo, Ladysmith. I'm joined with, of course, the local member of parliament, Lisa Marie Barron. And we heard a lot of stories and a lot of challenges. One of the biggest things is people are really struggling with the cost of rent. And it is taking up so much of seniors' income, particularly seniors living on a fixed income. So we need to do something urgently to make sure we lower the cost of living, make sure people can find a home that's in their budget and they can afford groceries and the other necessities of life. I also know that today people are going to want to have lots of questions around the Special Rapporteur's report. On that, I want to make it really clear. I respect the work of Mr. Johnston, but I disagree strongly with his finding that a public inquiry is not necessary. I disagree. Given how serious the allegations that we've heard, given that it attacks directly people's confidence in our electoral system, we have been calling for a public inquiry, and we remain resolute that a public inquiry is necessary to restore the confidence in our electoral system, to make sure we're showing Canadians that this is something we take seriously, and for people to have an opportunity to see and hear clearly about what's happening and what's being done to tackle foreign interference. This is something that's so serious that it requires a public inquiry. We are going to continue to push for one, and we're going to use every tool at our disposal in the House of Commons to continue to advance a public inquiry. The rigor of a public inquiry, the transparency, and the ability to have questions asked in public and people hear the responses is so important that it is required to deal with the serious allegations of foreign interference. We've seen, though, with the Rouleau Commission, the inquiry, the public inquiry into the Emergencies Act, that we can actually do this in a way that respects national security, because I understand and hear very clearly the importance of us not in any way compromising national security. So I wanted that to be clear. I understand that's a serious concern. We can do that. And the Rouleau Commission showed us that there's a way to ensure national security is not in any way undermined, and we can still have a public inquiry. I do want to point out that there are some findings that the Special Rapporteur made that are deeply concerning. And those findings were, one, that there was a serious communications breakdown in our intelligence services from what they found and then conveying that to ministers at the highest level. That communication breakdown is something that is completely is wrong. It should not happen and needs to be fixed. There is no justification for that. A breakdown in communication, that needs to be something immediately dealt with. The second piece of really concerning information that was raised by Mr. Johnston is that while there were red flags raised directly to the Prime Minister and to the government, no actionable steps were recommended. The government then just was willfully blind to that and didn't have any follow-up. That is a deeply concerning finding from Mr. Johnston, that despite being flagged of concerning information, the Prime Minister and other ministers did nothing with that. I accept that they were not told to do anything, but that doesn't mean that the responsibility ended. They could have said why. They could have asked for follow-ups. They could have asked for more information. They could have said, why is there no recommended action? And what could we do in addition? The fact that they were so willfully blind to hearing a serious red flag and then not taking any steps, to me, is deeply concerning as well. So there's things that were raised that were concerning. We're going to continue to push for a public inquiry. And I'll just say that in French, and then I'll look forward to your questions. Donc, on a eu une discussion,
So we did have a good discussion today with senior citizen here in Nanaimo. We also had the MP, Lisa Marie Barron. She was with us. We talked about the cost of living, how it is going up, and it's very difficult for families and for senior citizens to be able to make through a full month. Now, with the tabling of the Rapporteur Spécial report, I respect the person, but I am in disagreement with the public inquiry. He will not recommend one. We need one to restore the confidence that we have within our institutions for our democracy. I think this is essential that we have a transparent and independent mechanism. We will use all the tools that we have at Parliament to call for a public inquiry. Two things, though. One, what David Johnston found concerns me. There's a lack of communication between the information services. I think we have to find a solution for that. Then, David Johnston said that the Prime Minister and other ministers were briefed concerning the interference and nobody acted. I do understand that intelligence services didn't request any specific measures. But just the fact that the government received all of this information and no follow-ups was done afterwards means that there's a lack of accountability. They don't want to go further than that. They just accepted the information presented. And I don't think this is what we're expecting from a prime minister and from ministers. They have to take this very seriously. So I'm ready to answer your questions.
Bonjour.
Yep.
Oui, bonjour. Donc, utilisez la fonction de la main levée pour poser vos questions.
Please use the raised hand function.
Ask your questions. We will go online first because we want to go rapidly. So I will give the mic to Stephen Off of CBC News first.
Hello, and thank you for taking my questions. If you could answer in French and English, I would really appreciate it. First,
Sure.
will you get top secret security clearance to view the confidential annex that Mr. Johnston wrote up?
Yes, I will be receiving the top secret clearance to get the same information that Mr. Johnston received. I think that is what a responsible leader of an opposition party would do, and I will be doing that. Oui, je vais recevoir la clearance spéciale.
Yes, I'll get special clearance so that I can receive the confidential information that Mr. Johnston has mentioned. I think it's what any responsible opposition leader should do. I have to look at this information to see what actually happened.
You wanted a public inquiry. Do you have any indication from the Prime Minister that he intends to call a public inquiry regardless of Mr. Johnston's recommendation? And if he does not, can you continue to support the government?
So far, the Prime Minister has not in any way indicated that he'll launch a public inquiry. He can still, despite the finding from Mr. Johnston. And so what I'll be doing is I'll be sitting down with the Prime Minister, making it very clear that I disagree with the finding of Mr. Johnston, that a public inquiry is necessary. I will make that very clear. And I'll make it clear to the Prime Minister that we're going to use all the tools that we have at our disposal to continue to push for one at the federal level.
En français, Jagmeet.
And in French, Jagmeet, please. Oh, yes, right. Well, the Prime Minister at this juncture has not shown any openness to a public inquiry. But despite that, I'll be having a meeting with the Prime Minister and I'll be telling him that I do not agree with Mr. Johnston's decision. I will also tell him that I think we need a public inquiry, and I will advise the Prime Minister that we'll use all the tools available to us to force the government to hold a public inquiry.
Mickey from Canadian Press, you have one question and one follow-up.
I think you might still be on mute.
Sorry, okay. I guess is triggering an election one of the tools that you're willing to use in order to get a public inquiry?
That's not a decision that we're making today, but I will be sitting down with the Prime Minister and letting him know that I don't agree with the decision, that we will be using every tool at our disposal at the federal level to push for a public inquiry.
But why not trigger an election and have, parties run on that mandate, especially in a time when this report says that politicization is kind of interfering with democracy right now? Why not then just put that as a mandate to the public?
Well, for a number of reasons, we're not making that decision today. The fact that there is a serious concern about foreign interference in our elections, and the special rapporteur hasn't completed the work or any recommendations that should be put in place to protect or safeguard our democracy and our election. the fact that we want a public inquiry to protect elections, not an election that is under the cloud of suspicion of foreign interference. That would undermine the work that we're trying to do. Right now, we're not in a position, we're not making that decision today, but we are going to continue to fight to make sure that people can have confidence entirely in our electoral system, that the questions that people have are answered, and that we want to encourage people to participate in democracy. The voting is important, that you can trust that your vote will matter. And we want to make sure that people have that confidence and go out and vote. That's our goal, and that's why we're going to focus on that goal.
The next question is for Raisa Patel.
Hi there. So on the fate of your deal with the Liberals, you keep saying pulling your support on this issue is not off the table, but then you're also saying you won't make that decision today. When will you make that decision? You know, what else needs to not happen for you to make that call? Because all these weeks later, you still haven't got what you're looking for.
And let's be clear. So it's not a decision we're making today. What we are focused on today is making sure we push for what we think is necessary, which is a transparent and independent look into what happened here. The foreign interference allegations are serious. They cut directly to our democracy. And at a time when we see a lot of people and conspiracy theories raised by a lot of people around doubts around electoral results in the States, we don't want that to happen in Canada. That is something I'm deeply concerned about. We've seen declining voter participation in elections. That's something I'm really concerned about. I want people to vote. I want people to feel confident they can vote and their vote matters. And to restore that confidence, I want to make sure we are doing everything possible to safeguard our democracy. So I'm focused right now, our attention right now is how can we push forward better transparency, better accountability around our elections. And so I'm going to sit with the Prime Minister and say, I disagree with the finding. I think Mr. Johnston was wrong here. I respect his work, but I think he's wrong not to declare a public inquiry. And the Prime Minister can do that. And I will also let the Prime Minister know we've got tools. And we're going to use all those tools at our disposal to continue to push for a public inquiry. I respect and understand there's serious and sensitive information that could undermine our national security. I don't want that information disclosed in any way. I don't want to undermine our national security. But we can have a public forum that respects national security and still gives confidence to Canadians. And the example I'll point to is the recent inquiry into the Emergencies Act. That public inquiry created a forum where there was multiple lawyers that asked questions. There was an independent judge that reviewed the information. That allowed for a process that gave Canadians confidence. We could see what happened. We heard the Prime Minister get questioned. We heard other ministers get questioned. We heard other security officials get questioned. It gave Canadians confidence in the decisions around the Emergencies Act. Similarly, we need something like that to happen when it comes to foreign interference. And I believe it can be done, and I'll continue to push for that.
For our follow-up.
You say that you're sitting down with the Prime Minister. You're going to make your position really clear. I feel like you've done that with him already. You say that you're going to use all the tools at your disposal. Are one of those tools, you know, possibly triggering an election and pulling your support from the deal?
Again, that's not a decision we're making today. But what we are making very clear is we're going to use other tools to continue to push for a public inquiry. We've done something in the past where we pushed for a vote in the House of Commons. New Democrats made that happen. We're going to look at other tools to continue to push for a public inquiry. We think that is so essential and so important right now that we're going to continue to use the tools that we have to push for that.
If there's no further question online, we will go to questions in the room. Okay.
We're going to start with Greg from the Nanaimo News Bulletin. Okay. Thanks, Vicky. I had a question more related to the discussion
sure, yeah.
today. You mentioned that you've been speaking to seniors, and they were talking about affordability, specifically housing affordability. And I was wondering, as you have these sort of conversations across the country, are the types of problems that you're hearing in BC any different, like the intensity, the severity of what people are feeling with the housing crisis? Is it different here?
Well, what we're hearing is a lot of similar stories that across the country, rent, being able to afford rent, being able to afford to buy a home. These are some of the biggest concerns that Canadians have. And it's quite similar across the country. I would say one big difference is in BC, there are steps being taken provincially that we don't see in a lot of other provinces. But what we're hearing again and again is that it's not enough, that we've got initiatives being done at the provincial level without a partnership at the federal level. And the federal government has not stepped up with the urgency necessary to deal with the problems that we're up against. And one of the major problems is when you look at what's going on in people's income level, you think about seniors on a fixed income and how much it costs to rent a place, they're just so out of balance that people are struggling. We heard stories of people that are spending 60, 70%, in some cases, almost 100% of their income goes towards rent. And they're left in tears saying, well, what can we do to survive if all of our income is going entirely to rent? One example was someone on OAS gets $1,400 a month. The average rent right now in this region is well above $1,400 for a one-bedroom apartment. So what is a senior to do if their rent is far more than they're earning in terms of their fixed income? That is a problem. And that's something we've got to deal with in an urgent way.
A follow-up to that as well. With the House of Commons studying the financialization of the housing market, does that give you any confidence, that any sort of indication that the federal government wants to make moves to address some of the problems related to that?
So this is something that we've been pushing for as New Democrats. We realize that one of the major problems